last 2.5 years, I've been the only guy who are trying to convince the venture capital firms to just invest in PC and console gaming. But I just found that environment a little bit tone deaf, if you know what I mean. If you are trying to convince someone to do something, it's not going to happen, actually, in my perspective. So that guy should know that. In our first meeting with Shum, so one of my friends just insisted me to meet with him. I had a little bit fail fatigue about that finance guys, actually. So I started with the other investment a couple of months ago. So I was mentioning about my mobile company. So he made me stop then, and he just, let's skip to your PC initiative. So then I was shocked, obviously. So I couldn't believe that a person can also understanding the finance, but also can understand the deep knowledge, had the deep knowledge about the product. That's when I just told him that in my own mind, I'm living some kind of a bromance with him, actually. So welcome again, Shum. Thanks for being here with us today. And what would you like to say about how did you fund Agnitio Capital, and how did you just stop something and started that PC thing a couple of years ago?
Firstly, thank you so much for having me. It's been great to be here. I'm a frequent visitor to Turkey. I love being here. In fact, last year I was here 3 times. That was the first time we met, if you remember, in the fall. I think there's incredible talent here. That's why I keep coming back here. I want to caveat, and before I kind of introduce myself and a little bit about the firm, I want to caveat, what you said, because you have to provide a little bit of context. So imagine Turkey, even probably in the last couple of years, you've seen tremendous growth, tremendous success in mobile gaming across the board, and not even one time, multiple times, whether it's, Peak, Gram, Dream, Spike, etc. And now this whole new crop of grand games is, all these great new companies coming out. So imagine if you're a VC and you're thinking, well, there's a tried and tested formula, recipe for success that keeps repeating itself. So why am I going to rock the boat? Why am I going to suddenly think about PC when we have all this incredible latent talent in mobile? Why should I invest in PC, right? I mean, fundamentally, it's a difficult proposition. So I think I had the benefit of being in the industry for 20 years and having clients and investments across the globe. So I guess my perspective is much more global in nature and not maybe just specifically focused on a country like Turkey. So I'm thinking about much more broader global trends, and what I see happening in mobile, again, doesn't necessarily apply to what's happening here in Turkey, which are boom times, but across the board, pretty much in other countries, maybe with the exception of Vietnam and a few other select countries, mobile is going through a very difficult period. And it is incredibly difficult for early stage mobile gaming companies to raise, whether it's seed, Series A, Series B, through to later stage investments across the board, from angels, VCs, growth, institutional investors. So I think that context has to be provided. You have to consider that. I'll shift gears a little bit about myself now. So I was a gamer growing up. I went to a very prestigious university, and studied economics and started on Wall Street. This is more than 25 years ago.
He doesn't look that aged, right? He looks younger than me.
I
The secret is yoga, by the way, telling.
Okay, can plug that. Uh, no, but I did not find at least certainly when I started my career, a way to kind of fuse gaming and finance. So I was always doing mergers and acquisitions, but focused mainly on technology. It wasn't until I moved to London about 25 years ago that I first started getting exposure from a professional perspective to the gaming industry. And initially, I was working when I just transitioned over at a venture capital firm. And that's when we started making early stage investments in gaming. I mean, this was a very long time ago. There was a recession in the UK in 2003. That's when I set up Agnitio Capital with a view to kind of focusing on M&A. And that's when I decided, hey, you know what? Actually, the gaming industry is really, really exciting and fragmented and growing. And that's when gaming actually became a core vertical for our firm to focus on. And so over the years, yes, we've worked with We've worked with all types of companies, from mobile free to play to PC single player premium, co-dev studios, work for hire studios, game tech, etc. So we live, breathe, and eat games. I unfortunately, now that I have 3 kids, don't have enough time to play games like I used to. So I that's something I definitely miss. And of course, if I do try, my wife gets on me. That's definitely an issue. But yeah, that's basically us in a nutshell.
I convinced my wife to do play co-op games. Yeah, that's after we make the kids sleep, we played Peak for about last 2 weeks together. Yeah, that works. But not in Diablo. It takes time actually to.
Yeah, that's might take a little
Yeah.
time.
I think you just answered a portion of the first question, but is it because the big publishers like EA and Activision opened up the market for general PC audience because their launch frequency just went to it, about 6 or 7 years ago? EA just launched 18 titles. But last year it was 2. So there's a huge market opening for indies and double A's. What do you think about it? So
Yeah, I mean, I think big is better for larger console AAA publishers. They can't afford to spend time on smaller titles. That's why they focus on these large billion-dollar IPs and just regurgitate them, come up with a new, slightly more innovative version of it, whether it's a new Madden football game, a new FIFA type game, a new first person shooter title, what have you. So for them, they just have to take much bigger bets and have maybe a 2, 3, 4 year development cycle. Hopefully, with the advent of AI, that'll be reduced. Let's see. But yeah, they're focused on those big billion-dollar IPs and can afford to take the time. I mean, and look at Take Two. Who knows even if GTA 6 will get delayed again this year? Who knows? Wouldn't surprise me. But they know if they're going to have a great product, they'll sell billions dollars worth on day one or, within the first week. So that's, I think, a major shift of these large publishers focusing on bigger and bigger titles. So that leaves this huge open space, for whether you're small to even double A developers to target audiences. Because again, let's go back 6 or 7 years. How many games were released on Steam then? Maybe a couple thousand, right? Roughly. But how many users were on Steam then? Now you're talking about 45 million CCUs. I can't remember the most recent article, but back then it was probably, I don't know, a tenth of that. Who knows? So as the global audience continues to grow and more importantly, bifurcate, so many people have different, interests. Survival wasn't even a thing 5 years ago, right?
exactly, that's definitely correct. Because I found myself suddenly I'm playing survival
I,
games.
I, I didn't play a survival game until really COVID, and I had nothing to do, and I was like, oh, okay, this is
Helped a
cool.
lot.
Yeah, this is cool. So, I mean, yeah, you had the emergence of all these new genres, subgenres. And so I think I'll use an analogy to the music industry. The way the music industry worked 30, 40 years ago, you had a number of big record labels, and you only had, comparatively speaking to now, very limited amount of content that was getting released out there. But now there's millions of artists out there, and you can start uploading content on YouTube, various different forms of social media, TikTok, and you can be an overnight sensation. So the same thing applies to gaming now.
Yeah, most definitely. That provides us a little bit advantage about from the mobile. Actually, you can grow organically still in PC environment. That comes the question of what are the differences and expectancies as an investor of mobile investment and PC. And I wrote down because obviously PC do not scale like mobile. And how do you just convince your partners maybe that to be the evangelist of the PC business model can also be financially profitable and sustainable for investors?
Look, an investor wants a high return, right? They're always going to make an investment and they're thinking about their return on investment, right? That's the critical thing. And I think why a lot of investors continue to be interested in mobile is because of what you just said. Billions of potential customers out there. I think from my perspective, I'm also thinking about risk and the probability of success. That is getting significantly lower with respect to mobile. I mean, of course, even with Steam, there's going to be probably 25, 30,000 games released this year, something like that. So yes, there's definitely more competition, but significantly lower than mobile. So I think the possibility of success is definitely, just from an pure arithmetic perspective, a lot easier on PC. The distinction is, unlike mobile, PC, you don't have the same sort of soft launch metrics, or A/B testing or early indicators of potential success. And so I think that's why a lot of investors shy away from PC. And so in my experience, I think the only investors that continue to look at PC are those that are very knowledgeable about games, who've been playing games for many years, are going to be playing games for many years. So they're in it forever, right? I mean, these are forever. And let's be honest, there's very few of those because it is so high risk. But there's other ways that investors are looking now to invest into games. Project financing as an alternative, and that's becoming a lot more potentially viable than investing just in terms of equity. Because let's say I'm an equity investor. Let's say I come to your studio and I say, you know what? I don't want to fund the game. I just want to make an investment in the studio. Like Rebecca made an example with the 2 studios that they invested in Sweden. Those were your friends, right? So you don't even care if you make a return on that investment or not. I mean, and you already did, by the way, I know. but I mean, most investors want to see a return on investment, but if you've made that investment, you're only going to make a return if that company ultimately sells itself to some really big publisher way down in the future. And that could be 5, 10 years, maybe never. So that's a pretty risky investment. But what if you, as an investor, wanted to invest from the perspective of a project finance instrument? So let's say I say, hey, you know what? I really love your game. You've given me a budget. I will, provide the budget, but I want a revenue share. I want a recoup and a revenue share. And so you negotiate. And from the investor perspective, you're getting funding to make your game. Of course, you have to part with revenue share. But then from the investor, they're thinking, well, you know what? Now I don't have to wait 5, 10, or however long of a period it is until that company gets sold. I can actually start making money as soon as the game launches. So there's a much shorter time frame from when they're actually receiving funds back, and hopefully the game performs well, so they make their entire recoup their entire investment and make some profit along the way. That model has started to now become a lot more prevalent, and I think will continue to do so.
So that's where we old school editors come in actually, because we've been reviewing games for over maybe 20 years and we have a keen eye that before the launch I can just score the game and I just usually just guess the Metacritic note correctly. If you know what I mean, Orhun. Yeah. So your comprehensive answers just answered lots of questions here, and but I just still want to question about which genres and trends are the most appealing to you as an investor if you're following the Steam trends right now?
I don't like to follow genres or trends.
Yes, that's a good answer.
I don't. I like to follow. I think there has to be a connection.
Because in mobile, we used to have a trend watching thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we were watching closely the app, just rankings and
Sure.
sort of stuff.
I mean, you should definitely be aware of what games are performing well, or maybe if there's a new game mechanic or perhaps a new business model that works. I mean, Rebecca talked about social media. I think she's 100% spot on. I think whether you're a solo bedroom developer or whether you're a large AA publisher, you have to have a social media strategy. You have to have a way to connect with an audience. And maybe even before you make a game, maybe you make a trailer, maybe you make a very basic gameplay mechanic and you share it out there with the world and you see if it resonates. You see if there's an audience. Frankly, that's a better way of determining whether your game is going to be successful, that rather than spending all this time and effort, getting a budget, putting together a GDD. I mean, I would just say vibe code, come up with something, see if it sticks, get it out there, build that audience, and then you have a community. People love communities. That is what I'm looking for as an investor, communities. Can somebody come up with some sort of piece of IP or a mechanic that resonates and can create a community?
But very valuable strategy actually. The organic growth is the key rather than the mobile, because you need the constantly user acquisition and retention strategy there.
I mean, again, I don't want to downplay it. I don't want to downplay at all a good game. If you don't make a good game, it won't work, right? But if you have early indications that the audience really likes what you're developing, what you're building, I mean, that's what you leverage.
Exactly. So in the publisher perspective, for example, Landfall just focuses on a certain types of games. It's working for them, obviously, quite successful. In GameDev, for example, we are a little bit more, jack of all trades right now. We're trying FMV, side-scrolling adventures as well. So we are still trying to find our own way to make the game scalable. So is it the correct strategy to be and just focus on the strategy and then, or just you try and test different type of, or is it's all valid for you as a in terms of a publisher strategy?
You're saying if I'm an indie developer, should I work with a publisher or self-publish?
Self-publish, or while you're choosing your publisher, you go for a genre-oriented publisher or a
Right. I think it really depends. And I say this from the perspective of I'm the chairman of an indie PC publisher in Poland called Pretty Soon. We specialize in working with very small independent developers, sometimes a single bedroom developer, and usually typically up to maybe 10 max. That's kind of the size of the studio we work with. And to be honest, in the vast majority of those cases, we will never work with a developer unless there isn't a fundamental value add that they perceive we can add value and we perceive we can add value. So there has to be this intrinsic alignment. If that is missing, it won't work. It won't work for us. It won't work for them. 100%. So that's like the first, I mean, that's our kind of ethos, right? That's our mission statement. There has to be alignment. Then you can decide, right? And the vast majority of developers who work with us, a lot of them are very young too. They'll say, hey, I don't know anything about marketing. I just want to build this game. Can you help us? And we saw what you did with some of the other titles that we've been fortunate enough to have some indie breakout hits. And so they said, hey, we'd love to see, you potentially replicate the success that you did for, Backpack Hero or some of the other games that we published. And so then we have to really determine, hey, okay, well, are you developing something that we fundamentally think we can help with? Is it a genre that we know and we can trust? Do we think we can build a community via social media or other channels and create an audience? It goes kind of both ways. I think if you're somebody that's seeking that help, you need to talk to many people out there, because you maybe if you're lucky, maybe you find a publisher day one and you think, oh, this is great. But maybe also you could say, hey, you know what? I've been doing all of this on my own. I've kind of like figured out release management. I've kind of figured out marketing. Maybe, through someone, I have a contact at, Steam or Valve or something. So maybe actually all you really need is somebody in the background. And now there's even publishers who offer kind of publisher for hire services, right? That'll just shadow you, kind of what Rebecca was saying, And so I think there's a wide range of ways in which you could either self-publish or just fully commit to working with an external publisher.
Well, thank you for sharing your insights, by the way. Guys, if you have any questions to Shum, it's the best time to ask, I think. Merhaba Burak Akmenik.
Hello. A couple of months ago, we were discussing with Sinan and Faruk that Steam is getting so overcrowded now. There are lots of indies who are trying to compete there, and it's becoming a harder place to be. So, what do you think about consoles? Epic is not a very good competitor for Steam. So it's not a really matured market right now. So, the alternative is so low. Should we just directly make a game to the consoles, or first Steam, then consoles? What's your idea about it?
We have two titles, and I'm saying in the context of Pretty Soon. So we have two titles in our portfolio that we'll be publishing later this year. And we saw incredible traction on PlayStation. Really, really significant traction on PlayStation, a lot of wish lists. So I wouldn't discount console platforms. I think, of course, you need to, again, I go back to the point that I mentioned earlier, build that audience. So we found an audience. In the case of one of the titles, they put out a bunch of YouTube videos and really with a lot of quirky, eccentric humor. So it really resonated with the audience, and they just started building out of nowhere, really, a whole bunch of wish lists on PlayStation. So, I mean, I think that definitely you should have a console strategy.
We are always talking about Steam marketplace. What do you think about the other marketplaces in the future? I know it's obvious that Steam has the most, but on the other hand, we have the Epic marketplace and the other marketplaces on the way. And also there are some studios are basically building their own launchers to put their games like EA, Ubisoft, etc. And my second question is basically, yes, we are again talking about traditional games playing on the PC or console. What is your vision and opinion about playing games over stream? I mean,
Streaming, you're saying,
yeah, GeForce Now,
or in the cloud. Yeah.
in the cloud, GeForce Now, like Luna. So yeah, thanks so much.
Well, in terms of competitors to Steam or other marketplaces, I mean, sure, look, they're the massive dominant market share leader, but there are, other distribution platforms, right? I mean, you have GOG, and I'm sure you guys read about the most recent deal. You have Green Man Gaming, there's Gamesporium. So there's new distribution platform. In fact, I think Gamesporium was founded by Turkish guys, if I'm not mistaken. So, you do have alternative platforms and they're growing fast. I mean, of course, they're nowhere near the size and scale of Steam because Steam has had a 20-year head start on all of them. But yeah, they're growing. So I do think that there will be viable distribution platforms, alternative ones growing. So I think that certainly excites us. It should excite all of us as an industry. I think that to your other question related to streaming, to be honest, and I think a lot of people have tried in the past, but it just hasn't worked. And look at Netflix, right? They would have been perhaps one of the best placed media companies, just given their captive audience, to hopefully make something like it succeed. And they tried, and it's not going that well, right? So I don't know, to be honest. I'm a little less sure about streaming.
My question is about the landscape for the next 3 or 4 years. Like you said, there's AAA games or for A's right now, but there's indie game, but there's in between double A's and bigger indie couples. And the last couple of years, there's much more success like Sandfall, Expedition 33, and other games like that. Do you think major AAA's lower their budget or separate their teams into minor projects next in the couple of years? It maybe affect the indie companies' budgets or restriction. What do you think about that?
You're asking a very controversial question.
No.
No, and I really like the question. It's a great question. I'm watching my words here. In the context of getting games funded, right? So if you're having budgets above 3, 4, 5 million, it's really tough right now. And I think a lot of publishers that were mainly funding those types of games have reduced budgets, right? For various reasons that everybody here probably is aware of. So I think, again, if you're a double A or even kind of triple I, whatever you want to call yourself, studio, if you have a franchise or if you have games that, maybe are really specialized in a particular genre, sure, I think your probability of getting the new game funded, you'll probably succeed. But I think if you're a new double A outfit or you've pivoted, you want to try a new genre, and your budgets are kind of 4 or 5 million, and you're going to Gamescom or GDC or some other event to meet publishers, it's very difficult out there. So actually, to answer your question, I think there's never been a better time to be an indie developer, particularly if you're talking about budgets of, 50 to a couple $100,000 or whatever it is. So I think there's a lot more appetite for funding those smaller tickets.
Shum, thank you for being us today. And that's thanks for the insights. We made you a little bit more exhausted because we've been together like 3 days, 2.5 days. And thank you for your efforts again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Bring your expertise to the table. And we learned so much, by the way. I learned so much, by the way. And I'm spending time with you. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, thanks for being us today. And let's have a bit praise to Shum.
Yeah, thank you.
And Rebecca as well. Again, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.